Hello and welcome. This is Kristen from the Online Selling Show, and I did a video that I'm going to redo because I realized that it was almost like a Seinfeld show or something. It's still a Seinfeld show, but it's going to be you're going to get confused. So I thought, let me redo it. This was kind of happening after the sale that I went to, and I'm going to say it's going to be a ton of lessons I learned in there, but it had a bunch of knife rests as a collection in there. And in this particular sale, I really had tossed and turned and wasn't really wanting to go because I had so much, and I still have so much to list, that I didn't really feel that I wanted to go or I really needed anything to go. But there was some stuff in the garage that looked to be Christmas, and they were still packed up, and they never really showed you what was in them. I just tossed and turned, and I made the decision to just go. And the reason I'm doing the part 2 is that this is the part where I'm realizing that I really got more out of this sale by lessons learned, listening to my gut. And there really is a part 2 in here from the episode that I did of Not Everybody is Your Friend at these sales. So the first thing, we are now at this house. It is an over 55 community, I believe. This is the sale that I'm going to dub the knife rest sale. Okay. So when I get there, if you want, I will put the link down below for that video. So when I first get there, there is just me and another gentleman, and then a third gentleman shows up, and we were just kind of hanging out until they were starting to give out numbers. And when we got to go get the numbers, me and a gentleman that was behind me started to chit chat, and he mentioned he was a bookseller. I was like, really? I'm listening to him. And then I just happened to say, well, there was the sale last weekend. That was that house that had like all this, almost like a whole bookstore. Did you happen to go? And he's like, yeah, I went. He's like, they really weren't that good to deal with. And I said, really? And if you watch that episode, that one has the title of like shopping at a Victorian house. The seller was really not one that I want to do business with again because of the actions I saw and witnessed of being there. And that's something you may want to check out from that. But in talking to him, he's like, no, he's like, they really weren't that great to deal with. And I'm like, oh, just ask questions. And he said, well, he said, they didn't really have that many great books to begin with. And I can't fathom this because I'm telling you, look at that video. They had a whole bookstore behind this house. So I can't imagine there's nothing good in all of that. And he said, besides, I was trying to see if I could get like a big collection of like a bulk buy together. He says, no, they weren't willing to do anything. And he was just explaining that to me. And I'm thinking to myself, there was the first thing of a nugget for me from that sale. That was my assessment as well, was that they were just not that willing to work with their seller or their buyers. And the way that they came off was off-putting, and he started giving me explanations, and it was exactly speaking to me with the problems I had. And I did not in any way, I just said to him, like, really, that's interesting. Like, I did not do questioning or try to lead him in any way to give me that assessment. So when I left, then I got my number, I left, and then when we came back to the house and we're waiting in line to start going in, I was second, seller guy was behind me, and then as I'm standing around, as you do, and we were probably lined up for a good 15 or 20 minutes, I recognized somebody else, a different gentleman that was there that I had been chatting with at a different yard sale. And that yard sale was the one that was like chock full to the rafters. I bought a bunch of Fisher Price little people there. I mean, like, that was what I went for. He is one I referenced at that particular sale, had impressed me because there was so much vintage toys that everybody that was there was really much like wanting for that. And he saw like where he was in line, and he shifted gears, and he wound up buying 70 pairs of scissors. Yes, scissors. Because the woman was into lace and selling vintage fabrics and stuff like that, he knew she was going to have some really good pairs of scissors If you know anybody that does anything with fabric, the fabric scissors are the ones you don't dare mess with. And he knew that. And he really gained my respect in the fact that he really shifted gears fast. And we were in line for this recent sale. This is now the third sale of the initial sale that I'm there for. We just started chit-chatting, like, oh, hey, it was nice seeing you again. So we're just catching up with what happened from the initial sale that I had met him at. And I'm asking him about his scissors and what have you. In that conversation, it comes up, and he mentions to somebody about, oh, that woman that always buys Lennox. Well, if you watched the episode that I'm referring to, that this is a part 2 of, which is Not Everybody Is Your Friend, the woman that was at that sale where I was buying this Lennox, and she was trying to follow me around. Again, this is now a for sale I'm bringing up. She was following me around trying to convince me that this Lennox ice skating set that was from like the Charlie Brown figurines was not worth more than like $60. They just want too much money for it. And I really knew in my heart of hearts that she was trying to put this seed of doubt in my head, because I think they were charging $80 for it, or I don't remember, maybe even $100. And I knew what the value was. And I'm going to tell you, spoiler alert, I sold that for $195. And the woman just kept following me around and trying to convince me that it was only worth $60. And I really believed that she was trying to convince me so I would just put it back and that she could buy it herself. So having had this experience with a Lennox piece, and this woman that she starts telling me about, Lennox pieces she sold, and I was starting in that particular sale where she's following me around to build a rapport up with her. And I was like, oh, really? I'm like, have you sold other Lennox? And she's like, oh, I sell Lennox all the time. So I remembered that comment about her. And I also remember her from other sales because she's never really tried to build a rapport with me. And when she starts trying to like watch my back, and all of a sudden people are so crazy with their prices and that kind of thing, it was kind of getting suspicious then. That's in part 1. And I thought, and I had seen her at a sale before, and the reason I remembered her at this particular sale I'm talking about with the Lennox was because the sale before that one, she was in line ready to go in, and myself and somebody else had gotten our tickets. That was the one that I bought my vintage Christmas tree at. Lots of other vintage Christmas. And her nose got all out of joint because we were first and second, and we didn't feel this need to have to hurry up and get in there and line up. And him and I actually got chatting away from where the line was, so that when it started to get like 5-10 minutes before and we got in line, she was like, what number are you? And they didn't do regular tickets where they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like they were doing like the 50-50 tickets, and I was like 95 or something. So it was like a really odd number. So she couldn't gauge where she was previous to everybody lining up. And she kind of gave us an attitude. And I remember like when we were leaving, seeing her get into a car with some gentleman. And I remember like the gentleman wasn't with her in the house. So it was just like me kind of at that one sale, like looking like, wow, like that was kind of rude. And that's why she stuck in my mind. And then we go to another sale. She's trying to talk me out of buying this thing. And I'm like, that was kind of a little strange. That was where my gut was really kicking me off. So now the present story is that I'm at this one sale with these knife rests. And he starts talking about some woman that likes to buy a bunch of Lennox, and my radar started to kind of go off, or whatever the term. I tell you, I mess up cliches all the time. So that's just where I started tuning. I'm like, that woman liked to buy Lennox all the time. I wonder if it's the same rude woman. He's just talking about somebody. I said, do you happen to know what her name was? And I only know because she happened to be at the sale where I bought all the Fisher Price. He bought all scissors. And she was at that sale and bought all this uranium glass. And I heard him talking about somebody and her buying all the uranium glass, But I, at that point, didn't have any interaction with her, and I just had that one negative experience with her, didn't have any need to have any other interaction with her, and didn't do anything with her. But I remembered her because she was so rude, but I knew he knew who she was because she bought all the uranium glass. But I was not sure that she was the woman following me around with all of the Lennox stuff until he starts talking about her as some Lennox woman who likes to sell a bunch of Lennox. And I thought, so this is all the same person. The rude lady that wants to see my ticket when I'm getting in line. I suspected she was the same woman. I could have swore she was the same woman by all the uranium glass. And all of a sudden she's following me around in an estate sale. And I'm like listening to him tell, like, oh yeah, she likes to buy all this Lennox and everything. And I said, you happen to know like what her name was? I think I got talking to her the one day. He goes, oh, I don't know what her name was. He goes, but I know she drives. And he starts describing this car. And it's the car I saw her get into after the rude interaction with the, shopping day of wanting to see my ticket. And I'm thinking, he does know who she is. But now I'm not sure, can I trust him, Mr. Scissor Guy? Are they friends? And I'm just going to let it go. I'm just take everything in. How they recommend that's what you do. And I did a bunch of shopping in this sale. One of the preconceptions had been out there. This company that I was shopping at, where these knife rests, is so overpriced. And the first experience I had with them, I will tell you, was the Patience Brewster sale. And I found the employee that I was dealing with to be very high priced, very unwilling to do any negotiating. And I had paid for a few things to the woman who I come later to find out is the owner of the company. She was kind of willing to negotiate on some of the stuff after I dealt with being beat up by her employee, basically. I was close. I didn't know anything about the company at the time. They were getting ready to close, and I just wanted to get out of there, is basically what happened. So when I go to this knife rest sale, it's now the third sale I'm doing with them, because I dealt with her in getting a negotiated price and all that Fisher Price that I bought. And I felt that that's when I'm learning at the second Fisher Price, when it's that Fisher Price sale, that she was the owner. That's when I learned. And I found her to be very reasonable in giving a bulk price. So now when I'm at the sale for the knife rests, really wasn't kind of there other than trying to check out what these tubs of Christmas were that were in there. And she was very accommodating when I got there, and I asked her when she was giving me the ticket about the Christmas. She was very honest and told me, like, oh, it's just some very modern Christmas. It's nothing. And I was like, I appreciated her. It was refreshing that she was very honest about what she felt the condition of that stuff was. So when we finally got into the sale, I felt some of her employees were very overpriced and everything else. And I was just going to get a video, is what I was thinking at that point in time. I was just going to get a shopping video. And I did pick up very few things. I think I bought a total of 6 things, 4 pillows, and I think 2 other things. But what intrigued me was this guy with the scissors. The way he was shopping was he had negotiating down to an art form. And this is part of where, when I did my first video on this, I don't think I was very clear. He was very good in the sense that, like, if he was going into one aspect of something, so let's say you're in the kitchen, and he found that there was a salt and pepper shaker and, let's say, a butter dish, and they were from the same manufacturer and the same collection, and let's say one's 10 and one's 10, he would say to them, okay, well, if I take both of them, how about we do 15? So he would negotiate a deal for these particular 2 items. So now she would be like, okay, because she realized that trying to sell one without the other was going to be less advantageous, and she'd rather get rid of both. So he was negotiating the items at first. So he got her to agree to 15. So he would say, all right, okay, put this down, mark me down for 15. So she would keep a log for him. Okay, here's 15. Then he was going into the dining room, and let's say now he's picking up placemats and napkins that go together, and they would be 10 and 10. And he would say, all right, how about we do 15 on these now? She would be like, all right. So now all of a sudden he's got $40 worth of stuff negotiated to 30. And he was going around to all these areas in the house, in the kitchen. He would do this with multiple items. So he's negotiating small things at the same time that kind of went together, that she was like, okay, if I'm going to take the forks, the knives, and I would have to take the serving pieces too. Things like that. So she would get now him marked down for 30. But he was doing this over and over and over again, so that at the end of it, now all of a sudden he has like $100, and he would say, all right, how about just 80 for everything? So he actually wound up getting things negotiated like twice. And I was like, wow. I mean, he had it down to an art form. He taught me so many things in there, negotiating. That's when I realized that she was really way more receptive to getting things, deals and stuff like that. And I was just blown away. He was doing his thing. I was doing my thing. There's more to the whole story if you watch the episode for the actual shopping. And then when we left, we both happened to be leaving at the same time. And the way he parked was he pulled up on the opposite shoulder in. So him and I was parked like I was supposed to be, and then he came in. So we were nose to nose. And the reason that was significant was when I came out, I could see into what he's doing with his car, and he's putting his goods in the car and stuff. And I start putting stuff, and I'm kind of going around and putting stuff in my car. So it led us to both see each other. And I started saying like, oh, I guess you get some good stuff. And I thanked him. I said, you know what? You taught me so much stuff. I said, I thought I knew like anything, but you really. So that just opened the conversation up there at the car. And he and I started talking. He just started giving me some insight, because this company that we were at also has this reputation out there that they will buy up estates at the end for goods that didn't sell and go and sell it themselves. And one of the things when I started talking to her in my own paying of goods was, do you have anything coming up for other sales? Do you have other stuff with Christmas? And she's like, oh, well, we have stuff on our website, auctions going all the time. Again, I don't know where the goods are coming from. I don't know if these are smaller estates that she just finds not doing a whole sale. The house is worthwhile for. I don't know. But I found them to be somebody that I was going to be better aligned with in wanting to do some stuff for our wholesale business of liquidation to get out. And I do plan on approaching her in the next few weeks to start opening up lines of communication in that regard. Being that I'm at this sale and got very little, but he's gotten what he's got, and we're chit-chatting, and I just said to him, well, you know, what were you buying there? And he brings out a set of uranium glass, and I'm telling you, these knife rests. I will put some pictures up in here. You're probably saying to me like, what are they? I'm going to tell you, I don't understand either. I think unless you're eating at like the White House or somebody's like big deal mansions, they're basically where you put the flat side of a butter knife down on them, so you're not putting that, let's say, butter on somebody's tablecloth. You put it on this little barbell looking thing, is my understanding of how all this works. And he happened to pick ones up that were uranium glass, and uranium glass actually has uranium in the glass when they were making it. Obviously they're not doing that anymore today, but people do want this, and there's the value in it, because apparently when you put it under certain lights, it glows. So people do like this vintage glass. And he was telling me about uranium glass. And I said, oh, I do recall we were at that one sale. I said, I saw that there was a lot of uranium glass there. And he's like, oh yeah, that woman, she bought it all. And that's when I thought, okay, here's my opportunity. And I said, oh, is that the same woman with the Lennox you were talking about? And he's like, yeah. So now I'm thinking, okay, now I know I can trust him. Because he wasn't at first willing to say like he knew her. And I thought, if he's not going to give me that answer, that gives me feedback on trustworthiness. And then, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I was like so sick. He starts telling me about going back on day 2 to the sale that we met at, where the scissors were that he bought, and it's the Fisher Price that I bought. He's like, yeah. He's like, I went back for day 2. He's like, they were phenomenal. I started showing appreciation to him for not just showing me that negotiation in there. I told him, you gave me a whole like set of eyes too to think about shifting gears with the sale with the scissors. And that's how we got back talking about it. Because I said to him, wow, you really impressed me with that. And from there, it opened that conversation up again. And he says, yeah, I went back on day 2. He says, you can't believe, he said, they were pulling out tub after tub from the attic, and it was all this vintage Christmas. You know, I am like biting my tongue. I am like dying. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, no, they had all these like ceramics, and he had these knee huggers, and I'll put some photos in here. And he's like, oh my God, I sold that stuff. It went so fast. It did so well. And I'm like, I'm just dying. I'm just dying. Because when I looked at that sale on the estates.net website, I remember thinking like, oh my God, these people didn't get rid of anything in over 40 years. There has to be Christmas here. And as fast as that came into my mind, it went. And that was like, I should have asked when I was there at that house that was chock full, or I should have called them something and just said like, is there any Christmas? Because I probably would have made out like a bandit. He went back for the second day. He earned getting that stuff. Trust me, it just drove me like kicking myself. But honestly, as an update to that story, about 2 weeks after we went to the knife rest sale, the family of that woman put the rest of the stuff up as an estate sale that they themselves were running. They put up photographs of what was supposedly the Christmas that was left. There wasn't anything of any interest there. They happened to be holding the sale, the family sale, in conjunction with the same weekend of 2 other big hitting sales that I wanted to get to. And I honestly made the decision to not go. And I was still surprised. I had intended to stop in there just to put my mind at ease, but I never went. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. What I got out of that whole, and the reason I'm doing this part 2 of Not Everybody's Your Friend, is the listening to your gut. One, validation was the book people. I got validated from that first gentleman telling me that I probably don't want to do business with them. 2, the validation came up with from dealing with that gentleman with the scissors was that woman and the way she had me feeling about trying to have my back and trying to be there as like this friend that came out of the woodwork. That was the second, it was exactly the way I thought it went down. 3, I tossed and turned about going, and realistically, I probably should not have gone because there really wasn't anything value there. But this is solidifying for me between that lesson and then him telling me about them at the other sale with the Christmas in the attic, that I really need to open up lines of communication, talk to these people that hold these estate sales, make sure they understand and know what I'm on the lookout for, so that when we do have these kind of things come up, that if anything, they are thinking of me at that time to contact me. And then the other thing is also opening up, the other lesson is communicating with your other people that are shoppers out there. I'm not saying that this gentleman's going to be my best friend, and no means, but what it is telling me is that I can be just as generous to them in compliments and things like that. And these are genuine. These aren't things I'm just making up. I generally was impressed. And if you're not feeling that everybody's always your competition, you can learn a lot of skill sets back from these people. I don't know that it's in my nature to want to do this much negotiation, but I'm telling you, if I want to hone those skills, I don't doubt that I could do that kind of thing. Certain people are more receptive in the selling world for that, and I don't feel that that woman that was holding the estate sale was feeling in any way like it wasn't a win-win. She seemed very happy with the amount that they were agreeing upon, and that was fine. And probably the last thing in there was that there was that other level of networking that I'm going to be able to now see as a possible way to liquidate out of my wholesale business and use this other company. That's only to be determined if it's really going to work out for us. But if I don't listen to my gut, something told me to still get out of bed and go. In one regard, my gut was telling me don't bother, but at the same time, it was telling me to go. And as my son likes to say, 2 things can be right and 2 things can be wrong at the same time. I think at this point in time, they were both right. I should not have been there to buy anything for myself, and I should have gone because I got all these other lessons to be learned out of this particular day. So I hope this all makes sense. If you have any questions, please leave them below. By all means, I will try to leave these other links to sales that I'm referencing in the description down below as well. I appreciate your time and watching. I would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button that's down there. Help me grow this channel. And I would also appreciate if you left me a thumbs up. I'm going to say bye for today, and I'll catch you in the next one.